And the Assembly now resumes debate on Deputy Teddy's amendment to P143, and I call upon Deputy Pershard to speak.
Thank you, sir. As one of the possible token young people within the Assembly, about whom I think Deputy Southern referred in his earlier remarks before lunch, I must speak up in support of this proposition and the amendment. I do oppose the suggestion that if I were asked in the street about my culture, my heritage, or my identity, that I would immediately express a kind of English sentiment. And that is not to say that I have been, of course, greatly influenced by the culture across the seas, and I have, of course, attended university in the UK, and we have a lot to be grateful for that has come from UK culture and its own history and heritage, and those links remain strong and powerful and meaningful. However, in terms of being a Jersey girl and a person of Jersey heritage, I think that the language of the island is of utmost value. It is the language of my ancestors and the language of my grandparents, and a language which died almost instantly when the generation below my grandparents, thus being my parents, were actively told not to use it. And in fact, my grandmother's first language was Gerrier. She spoke Gerrier and then French and then English in that order. But my father's first language is English, and he also speaks fluent French. And the point I guess I'm making is that that loss was so greatly felt by me when I grew up speaking just English, and eventually did learn French, which I would hastily add is not fluent, but probably better than just a beginner. But the point is, the languages of our heritage, of our ancestors, and of our place of birth, or the place in which we choose to reside, are ultimately incredibly valuable indicators of our culture and of our own identity. And there is nothing wrong, I think, with celebrating facets of our identity in this particular way. I think making a language of the Assembly is a very powerful gesture in favour of what could be lost in terms of our culture and in terms of our identity. I certainly make it a point to explain when I am abroad where I am actually from. It's very easy to say, oh, I'm British, which I am, and particularly when you go quite far away. So I visited a friend in America recently, and everywhere I went said, oh, you're British, and where do you live in England? And I said, oh, actually, I don't live in England. I live on this tiny little island off the coast of France, and it's called Jersey, Old Jersey, the one that your New Jersey is named after. And people are really, really fascinated by this idea of a small community coming out of coming from this the channel. It's very enticing, very intriguing to people. And then to go on and explain, well, we actually have our own native, we still have pound notes, which is obviously very, very exciting. And it's even more exciting when you hold those pound notes up to the sky and say, look, what do you see? And they expect to see the Queen's head and in fact see a Jersey cow. And that is incredibly titillating to people. Because it's unexpected and it's kind of quirky and it's unique, and that's kind of what Gerrier represents to me. It's that quirk of our culture. It's that uniqueness of our identity. In terms of being a States member, being proud of our island and being proud of our cultural history is one of the biggest things that drew me to this very room. I think this room itself, just looking around it, embodies that history and that culture which we do revere, respect, and love. And of course, in any place, there are things of history which are less tasteful and of things that we perhaps are even ashamed. But that doesn't mean that we should throw the baby out with the bathwater and reject any attempt to celebrate and to show our love for our own island and our own history and culture. And for me, Gerrier is a very important part of that. And I do hope that by making it a formal language of the Assembly, that we also then take further steps to improve the teaching of Gerrier in primary schools, which is offered, but it would be wonderful if it was improved and offered in a more sustainable and kind of meaningful way, so that school children are actually able to genuinely speak in Jeriye with older members of society. Because if we don't do something about it, the language will truly die in the next 50 to 100 years, and that would be such a great shame. So I'm speaking obviously completely in favour of the proposition and the amendment, and thank you for listening. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Pampton.
Thank you, sir. It's a pleasure to follow the previous speaker. So, sir, those members who know my family history will know that I come from the Carey stock from my grandmother's side, and she fell in love with a Welshman who came to live in the island, the great late Taffy Pamplin of Marathi fame. And when he came to Jersey and he fell in love with my grandmother, he was quite taken aback, and I'm paraphrasing family conversations, of Jeriye, and he conversed in the Welsh native tongue that he spoke. And thank goodness they did, because if they hadn't fallen in love over their common connection of language, I wouldn't be here. And that's for others to debate if it's a good thing or not in the future. But that just perfectly illustrates what I think we're getting at here, is that connection between two people crossed divides and barriers and brought those two people who mean so much to me together. And my own relation is obviously important with my daughter, who I know I talk a lot about. But Beatrice was very lucky to receive the Jeriye speaking classes in her primary school, St. Lawrence. And she took to it like a duck to water, and she absolutely loved it. And it was a curious connection she made with our dearly missed grandmother, because she remembers a conversation where my grandmother said that she wasn't allowed to speak Jeriye. She wasn't allowed to speak it. And that's a great shame, because Beatrice realises that she's got the keys of education unlocked to her that ties her to her family history. And then she turned to me and said, "Daddy, well then you must speak to it, because you're now a very important person at last." And I think she meant my job and role that I now undertake it. And she said, "Well, obviously you do, don't you? And you're the other politicians you work with, and the bailiff, who she sees as her new hero in life, that she just expects it that we do that as her role. She looks up to me as her role model, and she just took it that if I'm learning this very important thing, surely you, as the ambassadors of our island, should as well." And that really struck resonant with me, which is why I've been enjoying the Jeriye classes I've been doing to brush up myself. I think we mustn't forget, though, that when you go into secondary schools, as she will do in a couple of years' time, that we must encourage bilingual education and learning the languages of the world that give her and many other young people the opportunities to succeed in life in our ever-changing and diverse world, that not just in public, it's also digitally, conversing with people of different languages is absolutely important. And we're not disputing that. We're just saying, as the previous speaker rather eloquently put, this is our little part of the world. And as we saw in recent weeks, islanders feel very protective of their island and their culture and their heritage. And this just gives it a bit of status and the opportunity to do that. We are aware there are very important things to debate, and as we look at our standing orders, we will do that. I just think this is a nice, important moment in history, and that is why I'm in support of the proposition. Congratulate my fellow deputy and the amendment as well.
Deputy Morrell, did I see your light before lunch? I think I might have done. Yeah, thank you.
Merci, monsieur. Quand je parle français ici, il n'y a pas de problème. Mais Madame la députée Martin, elle ne comprend rien. Mais ce n'est pas un problème pour elle. Donc, je ne comprends pas son argument contre le Jeriye ici comme une langue officielle de cette chambre. And now I'll move back into English, because I've made my point. And it's really interesting, because this is one of those propositions where I'm so blinded by my wish for it to be carried that I find it hard to understand the opposing arguments. But for me, one of the biggest sadnesses of my life, and I've thought this since I was a young child, is that I don't speak Jeriye. And yet I know plenty of my ancestors, and at one point all of my ancestors spoke Jeriye. And the reason I feel a huge sadness about that is because it's not just about losing words on a page, or according to the advocate, words that were never put to a page. It's about losing a deep cultural connection to your history, your past, and yes, as many people, including Deputy Pershard, just said, a connection to your own identity. And I've always felt that a part of my identity as a person from Jersey was missing, because I could never read the works of Wast. I could never speak to people, and when I was younger, I did hear people speaking Gerrier far more often than I do now. I could never respond to them or speak to them. And even recently, I was speaking to a former politician in Jersey, and he started speaking Gerrier, and I just had to kind of look blankly at him. And I felt a sense of shame that here I am, someone whose family is, on one side is so rooted in Jersey, it disappears into the mist of time, and on the other side, it disappears to France after a while. And yet, this is missing. But this sense of shame is actually at the heart of why I think we should make Gerrier an official language of this chamber. Because it was a sense of shame that authorities in the past used to embarrass islanders into not speaking Gerrier. If you spoke Gerrier, you weren't moving up. You were down amongst the lower classes. And that sense of shame was used to great purpose. Hence, we are now here debating whether Gerrier, to some extent, we're debating whether Gerrier has a reason to stay alive or not as a language. The same tactics were used against the Welsh. The same tactics were used against the Irish. They were used against the Scottish. And they were used against the Manx in order to wipe out their languages. And they came incredibly close in all of those jurisdictions, in all of those nations, to wiping out those languages. I've had the pleasure to spend 2 years of my schooling in Wales, and I was always incredibly pleased that all road signs were in Welsh and English. Not just road signs, signs for shops, banks. Everywhere you went, it was in Welsh and English, Welsh and English, Welsh and English. And yes, it's also true in Wales that the further north you go, at some point, the English in the South Wales where I was, the English is above the Welsh. Then at some point, halfway up Wales as you head north, the Welsh goes above the English. And that in itself, though, shows the importance people have and the importance of languages to people and to their identities. And certainly in the north of Wales, that Welsh sense of identity is stronger than in the south of Wales, and that was reflected in the order of languages on signage. It is easy to talk about our history and our connection and our identity. But, and I think it was Senator Mezek who said this, and I agree with him, it's not just about our history, it is about our future. And it is about a future in which Jersey can look proudly upon itself and upon its linguistic origins and the way the language spoke through society and helped Jersey come together as an island. And we will need that in the future as we face various challenges. And this assembly, although I know from a practical perspective, I will almost certainly never stand up and introduce my speech in Gerrier, as much as I may do it again in French. But that is just because of my own limitations in speaking Gerrier. I've had a few lessons with my teacher up there, but not enough to get me even uttering a word yet. So, it does sadden me to hear people say that it's not practical, it doesn't matter, just get rid of it, let's ignore it. Because I think they're really missing the point of this proposition, or this amendment, sorry, in this case, Deputy Tadier's amendment. And this is about saying that we recognise Gerrier, we believe it does have a future, and that future is different to its past. That future will be as a written language, not as the learned advocate said, has communicated to all of us that it was only an oral language in the past. All languages were oral languages before they became written languages. Sanskrit may be the only one that wasn't. I don't know. But basically, that's how languages begin. They are spoken, and then they become written down. Gerrier has lost the conversational aspect, but we are able to save it precisely because we can write it. And by writing it, then perhaps people will start conversing again one day, and that will be a different future, and that language will have a different future, and Jersey will have a different future as a result of it. So I hope you can understand my tortured logic, and that this isn't so much about the past. It is, as much as anything, or more than anything, about the future. And I really hope we do adopt Jere as an official language of this assembly, even if the reality is in my lifetime I'm unlikely to see anyone give a speech in that language. To suggest that it will be an impediment is wrong. To suggest that not being able to understand it is a problem, that is wrong. There are so many bilingual, trilingual parliaments around the world that it really isn't ever going to be a problem. So I hope people understand that even if they just do it to pacify those of us who believe Jere has a place in our future, that they do feel that they can vote for this proposition, because I do think it's important. I do think it will help people in Jersey move past that era when to speak Jere was shameful, and to move into a new future where to speak Jere fills them with pride. Thank you.
Colin Thompson, say there.
So you'll be glad to know I won't repeat what I said last time. So the beads of sweat on your brow will be all right. And Hansar will be quite safe. I would like to say that my deputy on the opposite side of me, Pershard, she spoke very well. And it is a heritage we've got. You go through the town here and we hear lots and lots of languages, and we don't bat an eyelid, and yet for some unknown reason, here we are in our own states trying to discuss whether we should keep ours. We let everybody else keep theirs. We don't say you have to learn English, or you have, and if we meet somebody who doesn't speak English, we help them through and there isn't a problem. And I think it's very sad that we've had to bring a proposition into this government for us to find whether we want to keep our language or not. As a Jersey person, and my mum and dad were here during the occupation, and my brother, and that was a language that saved most of the Jersey people because they could talk amongst themselves in front of the Germans, and the Germans hadn't got a clue what they were saying, and it was absolutely wonderful because we didn't stop the Germans from talking. In fact, the Germans insisted that we learnt German. Why can't Jersey, just for once, stand up for itself and say, yes, we have a language, and we're proud of it. Okay, some of it's a little bit obsolete, but we're still going to use it. As someone who's sung Beautiful Jersey in Liberation Square for lots and lots of times, and now sing it for the evacuees, it's a song, even when it's in Jere and some of them can't understand, that's close to everybody's heart. Montford's group do it now. Kit is absolutely fabulous. He's taught it to them in sign language. And I think that if that was brought for Liberation Day, singing Jersey French with the sign language, because we have to remember that the Liberation Day we've got coming up now, 75 years, not that far off, is going to be for the Jersey people, and there are not many of them left. And it needs to be made for them. And they spoke Jersey French. And they need to be spoilt, and they need to have... Jersey needs to, and I've said this before, we need to take the bull by the horn, grasp the nettles. This is our language. This is our island. You're more than welcome. Anybody can come. We really don't mind, because you're all an asset. You all speak your languages, that's fine. But please, do not stop me from using mine. Merci, Barefe.
Deputy Ash.
Thank you, sir. I shall keep this short. I just want to take issue with a comment made by Deputy Labby earlier, where he said in this amendment there is nothing to be frightened of. Well, the thought of Deputy Tadier making one of his longest speeches in Jere and then translating it into English, I think is petrifying.
Does any other member wish to speak? Deputy Higgins.
Thank you, sir. I'm only planning on speaking once to the various amendments and so on. Just a number of points. Deputy Morell mentioned that we're very protected by history. I think history is important. And yes, keeping a language is important. However, I've got a but here. What percentage of the population actually speak or understand Jere? Right? That's the first point. So if we preserve it so much, why is it others haven't taken it up? And we've had courses in the schools, and yes, I think it's great that they're doing it. But I don't believe that we should go overboard when it comes to putting signs up in both languages. I know, talking to others, the road signs will have to be twice the size as they are at the moment, with Gere on it and English on it. We already complain there's too many road signs.
The amendment, please.
Yes, sorry. So I'll try and come back to the constable in a minute. So that's the first of it. But my biggest objection to it is, what's it actually going to cost? To rebrand, re-sign, everything. And the reason why I'm mentioning the cost is we go on about the children going to school without sufficient food or going to school hungry. We're talking about many members of our society are in poverty, and we need to do something for them. And I think we've got our priorities wrong if we're going to put this before anything else. And so I can't support this, and I will not support it. So I agree with the Constable of St Mary and Deputy Sutton on this issue. But as I say, I do agree with the initiatives in the school, and for those children who wish to do it, yes, they should be encouraged to do it. But I do not believe that we should go 100% in this direction of trying to rebrand everything and the signs and so on. And as far as the Constables and Saviour is concerned, it's not trying to stop you speaking a language. Unfortunately, I'm one of those people who has trouble even with English, right? So I have trouble with other languages. So I know my own limitations. So I admire the fact that you can speak Gere and those who can speak French and German and all the other languages. But I don't believe that we should be forcing it on the society that we actually have. So as I say, I won't be supporting any of the amendments or even the proposition. Thank you.
Any other member wish to speak? Senator Farnham.
I just wanted to say, sir, that it's really no big deal. I mean, members have been able to address the Assembly in French for a very long time, longer than in English in actual fact. And in my time in the States, I can remember it happening on a handful of occasions. And I think that if we are to show that we are serious about our culture and our heritage, we should start by allowing members, should they wish, to address the Assembly in Gere, although in practice, sir, I don't think it will happen that often. But having the right to do it, I think, is important. Thank you.
Any other member wish to speak? Chief Minister.
Yes, sir. When I actually came into this Assembly this morning, I was minded not to support the amendment. I will say we have worked with Deputy Masson on the main proposition, and I think we've got what I would consider to be a practical solution, and it is not about road signs, because signage was actually taken out of the amendment. And Deputy Masson was trying to be very practical where he can be, and it's about replacing things as they are needed. But I must admit, for me, originally, it was, I'm in the territory of a number of other people. I've never spoken Gere. I definitely, obviously, speak French, and as Vice President of the APF, of the Assemblée Parlementaire de la Francophonie, of course, I'm very much in favour of French. And that's what got me thinking, as I've been listening to the debate going on. What we're talking about is putting Gere on the same footing as French in our States Assembly. And I think if you actually look at the proposition, that's all it is saying, is that members should be recognised as one of the, okay, we have arguments about the official language or not of that Assembly. And I think actually if we're serious, and one of the reasons we've got a Minister for International Development is about island identity. It's one of the themes in there. It's about promoting the island, obviously in a wider context. Island identity is part of that. And if part of our island identity is allowing one of the oldest languages on the planet, near enough, with exaggeration, but to be spoken in its home assembly, that would actually seem to be a very logical place to be. It doesn't have to be spoken all the time. It doesn't, I think the point has been made by PPC very clearly, in the same way as for French, there will have to be whoever speaks that language have to say what they have said in English afterwards. I do note the comments from Deputy Ash and probably share his concerns. But if we actually stand back from it, that's where we are. And also, I'll just say this, and again, I was in very much the territory, and to an extent, I said I both my children are doing languages. They've both done the introduction things in Geria in primary school. But where would I normally like them to be? If there's any one choice, I want them probably to do mainstream French. I'm glad that they will learn something else as well, mind you. However, that was a stance from probably 2 or 3 years ago. And that's probably not dissimilar to many people on the island. But actually, we then had a presentation from, I'll say Professor Jones, who is obviously a specialist in, anyway, a specialist in languages, particularly including Geria. And the presentation she made to us is that you have a 1,000-year-old language, a living language, and if you do not do anything about it, it will die on your watch. And that really struck home. And then she went on to talk about the fact that it is the basis of a whole range, and I always wish I had the list actually of English words. Actually, it's the foundation of a whole range of the English dictionary, is the language that is still spoken on this island. And she also then went to talk about the experiences of Manx, which I think had actually died, and they've managed to rejuvenate it. So that's not saying I'm going to be rushing out to speak Geria. I'm probably too far down the line on that front, although I will definitely try and do some phrases. But I'm very much keen to see it not die on our watch. And if that message then says, actually, whether in reality it will do very much or not, I don't know. But if it sends a message to say, yes, you can have the ability to speak it in our assembly, then maybe we should go for it. And actually, I think Senator Farn was correct. I don't think there is that much to lose on the downside. There may be some on the upside. So on that basis, I have been swayed by the debate, and I certainly will be supporting this amendment, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, sir. As a Cockney boy, I'm as useless as language as one would expect. I can hardly struggle with French. And I came into this debate feeling very negative about it. I thought it was impractical, and I worried about social exclusion because such a small percentage of people can speak it. But not only in this debate, but reflecting, I do not want to see this island lose its identity. It is key. I came here in the 70s, and even as recently as that, there were people working in my offices who normally only spoke Jersey French at home. And I heard those people being corrected and ticked off by others, you mustn't speak that. And of course I didn't understand what was going on. And of course over the years, the longer one hears it fluently at auctions and out in the northwest of the island, one hears it. And I'm frustrated that I can't speak it. And I don't suppose I ever will, but I just do not want to see our identity becoming any more anglicised. And we've seen this, the pressure on us, this island, to become just another English county council. Absolutely not. And so I want to resist that. And I'm not sure, I'm looking forward to how target operating model translates into Jersey French. So, and of course, we've had to, I'll leave my comments about the loss of the States of Jersey into the government of Jersey for another day. But, so I am a convert, and also to these propositions. Hang on to the culture, celebrate it. Yes, there's big practical issues about what will be the practical effects, but if we decide here today to discard it, that would be a retrograde thing. And it could be economic importance for us as well, for tourism, for the difference and so on. So I'm going to support both of these, both the amendment and the proposition.
Any other member wish to speak? Then I call on Deputy Teddy to reply.
Thank you, sir. I'm glad that from time to time that the debating chamber still serves its purpose and that we can have a good debate and that people can have their minds changed. And when it comes to the Geria question, that's very much something that I've been on my own journey with as well. So I remember when I was a younger politician, and the members will know that I have a passion for languages and a passion for language learning. And I think no one knows that perhaps better than Senator Valois at the moment with all my questions to her about education in Jersey. And it really pains me to see a decline in language learning. For example, French, which is one of the languages that we theoretically still adopt as an assembly, is in decline. It's no longer taught obligatorily in our secondary schools, so you can stop learning French at the age of 13 and 14. I don't know why that happened. I suspect it's retrograde, and I certainly would want to reverse that trend. And I asked questions in the past saying, wouldn't it be better to spend money on the acquisition of Chinese rather than spending money on Jerier? Because surely, from a utilitarian argument, there are more Chinese speakers in the world, and we want to do business with that area of the world. And then I realised quite quickly, it wasn't long before former Senator Jean Lemaitre was on the phone to me, of course, and we had a good chat. And I learned actually the value of not just Jerier, but of all languages, but particularly the fact that Jerier does have its own value. It's part of our culture, and I got a new appreciation for that. And I suspect that there might be many reasons for my change of heart, but I think that there's an element of truth, big truth, in what one of the deputies of St. Lawrence, who is also called Deputy Morell, I think, in this chamber. It's all very confusing. And he made the point that there, for a long period of time, Jerier was literally and metaphorically beaten out of people, often with a ruler, but it was still, there was violence towards young children who had the temerity to speak Jerier in a classroom because it was thought that it would interfere with their acquisition of English and what was termed good French. We now know, of course, that's nonsense. But I still suspect that there's an undertone with many of a particular generation in Jersey who are embarrassed to have internalised that prejudice. And we've heard from certain speakers, for different reasons, and I'm sure that they're valid points to be made, that we see some of that prejudice coming out. We see some linguistic chauvinism, if I may call it that, and some linguistic colonialism coming out, as if to say, English is the language which most people in Jersey speak, it's the language which they should speak, and therefore we should only use that language. Now, I did send an email, because I understand that. I also like clarity when it comes to things, and as I've got older, I've realised that not everything is black and white. So I asked for clarification from the Privileges and Procedures Committee about whether or not prayers should continue in this assembly, not full stop, but just in French, or whether they should be in English. And I think the greffier, or Deputy Greffier, won't mind me reading it out. I said I'd be grateful if you could ask PPC to give consideration to the roll call and prayers being performed in English rather than in French. The rationale is that Jersey is now an English-speaking island and that the state's business is conducted overwhelmingly in English. It should also be noted that the established church in Jersey is the Church of England, not the Church of France or the Church of Jersey, and the Dean is an English speaker, not a native French speaker. The whole affair, it could be credibly argued, is thoroughly bizarre. So that's what I wrote, not 10 years ago, but actually just in October. And I got a response saying that PPC has considered this at the last meeting. Its initial view is that it's not minded to acquiesce to your suggestion, but it was asked to contact, we've asked to contact you to ask whether you've raised this in capacity as an Assistant Minister for Culture or as President of the APF. And I've yet to respond. So clearly, and there's clearly a bit of fun going on there, and all behind the scenes. But I think it's really important, because if we want to develop that utilitarian argument to say that, well, actually, if Jerier is of little use in this assembly, then French clearly is of little use. And to address Deputy Higgins' point, then the second biggest language in Jersey, which is spoken widely in civil society, I presume would be Portuguese. After that, I presume it would be Polish, probably followed by Romanian and then French, although there's no doubt many people in Jersey society who have French as a secondary language. And that's the difficulty when you pursue the utilitarian arguments to its logical conclusion. We should, in theory, adopt Portuguese as our second language of the assembly. It might serve to engage many of the Portuguese community. But it, of course, misses a trick, which is that our traditions are not steeped in Romanian, Polish or Portuguese culture, but they're steeped in a mixture of British, French and Jerier Norman culture. And what I'm seeking to do with this proposition is to enable us to be allowed to speak Jériais in this assembly. So this proposition isn't about forcing anybody to do anything. It's okay for Deputy Southern to come in with his mug, saying that he's a reformed, grumpy old man. He's clearly forgotten the mug today, and he's clearly forgotten that he's a reformed, grumpy old man as well today. But he's allowed to bring his mug in. I can't read these words out to you, unfortunately, because they're in Jériais. But I can read them in English and translate them. It says, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. And as far as this Jériais mug, Reformed Jersey mug, is concerned, it's more than half full, it's 4/5 full. So at least that's something that we can be proud of. So I do make the proposition. I hope that it would be great if we could all get behind this today. This is simply an amendment. And I value the words of my minister as well, Senator Farnham, who realises this isn't a big deal. This is something that we can get behind. We can also use it for branding. That's not the prime driver of it. But it is great when you go to a new place and you see that there's Jériais signage out there. And it would be ludicrous, wouldn't it, if we had Jériais signage at the police station, if you've got the co-op putting up their own Jériais signage, if we've got our own letterheads in Jériais, we've even got disclaimers that are written in Jériais, but we ourselves are forbidden to utter a word of Jériais in this assembly. It just makes a complete nonsense of it. So I think there's a sense, paradoxically, in which using Jériais can be inclusive. We know that many Portuguese speakers, students, newcomers to the island like to learn phrases, and I think we should adopt this, hopefully, universally. So I do make the amendment, sir, and ask for the appel.
The appel is called for. I ask members to return to their seats. The vote is on Deputy Taddier's amendment P143, Jériais promotion by the public sector amendment, and I ask the greffier to open the voting. If all members have had the opportunity of voting, I ask the greffier to close the voting and announce the amendment's been adopted. 37 votes in favour, 8 votes against.
The ayes, please.
Greffier, please.
Those voting contre, the Connétables of St John and St Mary, Deputies Southern, Lewis, Higgins, Pinnell, St Martin and Ash.
Very well, that amendment having been adopted, we now return to the main proposition, which is open for debate. Does any member wish to speak?
Sir.
Deputy St Martin.
Thank you, sir. And seeing as members are recounting their family history, I'm very proud to tell members that my family tree goes back to the mid-1400s in Jersey. I wish I could take it further. Many of my ancestors, generations before me, will have spoken patois right up to my father. Jersey French was his first language, and he was one of those embarrassed at school to stop using it. When I look at my family tree, I feel a great deal very proud of my island heritage. And like Deputy Pershaw, when I worked in France, I took great pains to promote my island and to tell people where I came from. I couldn't agree more with Deputy Taddier when I see that the French language being taught to our children is in demise, and I think that's sad. France is as close to us as any other country, and being able to go there and talk their language is not only important for us, but it's very important to them. And I've always found that being able to speak French in France, rather than relying on French people's ability to speak English, got me much further when I went there. I also agree with Deputy Taddier about Polish and Portuguese. And certainly, I know more Polish and Portuguese than I do Jériais, but I'm not proud of that, but it's a fact of life. But sir, when we come into this assembly to debate propositions, we need to think more about just heritage and how proud we are of our island. We need to consider all aspects and how that affects people that we represent. So that's why I'm disappointed that in this proposition, the implications, the financial implications, have not been properly examined. Deputy Masson used Wales as one of his examples, and it's a fine example to use. Any of us who've been to the Welsh Assembly or been to Wales will see how much they promote their language. But do members in this Assembly know how much it costs Wales to do what they do on an annual basis? I'm going to tell you, £75 million is the cost to Wales to do what they do with their Welsh language. In Jersey terms, that would probably equate per capita £2.5 million annually. Now, I'm not saying for 1 minute that Deputy Mussell's proposition is going to cost us £2.5 million next year if it's successful, but I make the point. Sir, trying to find any way forward on an issue like this is always and often a compromise. And I feel that what we currently have in Jersey, our GEA plan and our commitment that we've currently made, is sufficient. Members have been talking as if we have no commitment to our language, no financial commitment to making sure it stays alive, and no commitment to our young people learning it. It's not true. So I believe we've made enough of a commitment thus far, and I am a supporter of keeping the language alive. I feel we're doing that. But I fear, sir, that this proposition is the thin end of the wedge, and I hope when members reflect on 2.5 million, they will see that. And I'm afraid to say that until we have much more detail on what these financial implications of this proposition are, that I'm not going to be able to support it.
Any other member wish to speak? Centre ballot.
So I'm afraid my speech is going to be in the same vein as the speaker I'm following, Deputy Luce. I supported the amendment. I'm quite happy to have GREA as a recognised language within this assembly. But the amendment from Deputy Mass, I'm afraid, in terms of the wording, although it took some out of the sting of what he was asking for signage, didn't take out all the consequences of supporting this proposition. Unfortunately, these debates can quite often be divisive. I think that's unfortunate at times, because you shouldn't be taking sides on issues like this, because they are important, and I absolutely accept that GREA as a part of Ireland life and needs to remain that way. It's not often I concur with Deputy Southern on many things, but today I actually absolutely can. As I said, nobody is denying the importance of GREA, and certainly it's going to be part of our history, and it certainly needs to be part of our future. But as Deputy Sir Martin's just said, R72/2017, the GREA plan, gave us a clear, detailed plan for developing GREA in Jersey. Now, I know some may feel that didn't go far enough, and I know Deputy Massell probably feels that way, that there were elements of that didn't quite hit the mark, and he wanted to go a bit further. But it did deliver GREA lessons in primary schools. There's opportunities for further learning for both children and adults. We have a GREA website. I can't even say GREA, never mind speak the language. But we do have a GREA website. We're committed to online learning. And I do understand the need for increased visibility in the island. I think nobody would deny that. But it does include a pathway, and it does include set actions, many of which I think we've already met. And I, like many, know that learning another language does have benefits to overall learning. But I believe we've gone far enough at present in regards to what we're trying to do with GREA and how we're delivering that. For me, this proposition just goes a little bit too far. I do worry about priority in schools. We know we've got limited time in our current curriculum, and I'm concerned that other important elements within schools are not being really well addressed. And one I would think of immediately, which is of concern to me personally, is the physical well-being of children. So I think we need to be very careful about how much time we give to certain subjects in school. But again, I understand the need for keeping this important language alive. Deputy Teddy knows I'm supportive of what he does. I know he's got a true passion for GREA, and he often uses GREA in our ministerial meetings. He loses me every time he does, so I know that passion is there, and he brings that through. I have family members that still speak it, and probably some of those will not be happy about the approach I may take on this. But I'm sorry, for me, this proposition, like I say, goes a touch too far. I don't feel any shame for not speaking GREA, but I do feel it's wrong to suggest that shame's a reason for supporting this proposition. It shouldn't be. I'm a proud Jerseyman. as we all are here. I think we're proud of our island, proud of its history, its culture. I'm certainly proud of the achievements that we achieve in all sorts of areas. But I don't think Jerier is going to be the thing that brings Jersey together. But it does have a future, but I just don't think it has a future in what's being suggested within this proposition. In terms of Deputy Higgins, 3% of our population speak Jerier. It's a small number, and I'd like to see more having an understanding of it. But like I've said, we have a perfectly good Jerier plan that I believe we need to support. It's well defined. It's been, I think, well put together over a period of time. But for me, this proposition just goes a touch too far. There are ways to carefully and selectively use Jerier. I've got no issue, for example, on my card that's got the Government of Jersey on one side, and I'll hold it up. It says Senator Steve Pellett on one side, and on the back of it is in Jerier. That's a good use of Jerier. I've got no issue with that. But in terms of what we're trying to do with signage, I'm just sorry that this just doesn't ring it for me. There are better ways to use funding. There's better ways to ensure that Jerier can become a larger part of life in Jersey. This for me is not one way to do it. So I'm sorry, I can't support this proposition.
Councillor Billard.
Thank you, sir. I must differ to the last two speakers. I think that actually our generation is to blame. We're quick to blame the generation before us, but realistically we've let things slide. And if we are to get this language back on its feet, if you can call it that, we have to constantly push. And this proposition today, I think, is doing that. The island is becoming more cosmopolitan. We've heard references to different countries, different Eastern European countries, and they are speaking their own languages, and it's easy for us to, should we say, level out to the same level as every other town and city in the UK and possibly the continent. And I would pick up the suggestion of the deputies that we need to retain our own identity. It's so important not to lose it. It's fragile. And I, sir, for one, will be pleased to support the proposition.
Deputy Secretary.
Thanks, sir. So I don't want to speak against my colleague at EDTSC because we get on, but it's just to present a different point of view. The first thing is that as a linguist and anyone who's learnt any language, whether it's our own native tongue, when I say English, when I say that, rather than anything else, or whatever language we grew up speaking, it's that it's really helpful to be able to see and visualize when you're learning a new language. And certainly, I need to be able to visualize, if not see it right now. I need to know in my head how something is written, so that because it contains all sort of information, it's easier to remember. It's easier to find out where the words came from, the cognates, to remember and cement that word in your memory. And people say they don't speak Jerier, but I suspect that lots of us know exactly what "Sayez le bienvenu" Algérie means. And I'd like to say to the Jerier teacher, now I can do it, I think, because we passed an in-principle decision, "Sayez le bienvenu, Ben." Because we've seen it written. You go to the airport, you go to the harbours, and you know from the context what it means. So that means even people who aren't from Jersey will know what that means. When you see "Merci bien de fait" written down, you know what that means. And it's great to be able to say "Merci bien de fait," but sometimes you might want to finish off an email, or you might want to wish somebody happy birthday on Facebook, but do it in Jerier. And you might know how to say it. It's "Bon anniversaire." But how on earth do you pronounce that? Is it B-O-N? Is it B-U-O-N-N-E? You might get it confused with your Italian, because it's quite similar. It's a Latin-based language, so you want to know how to write these things. So the basic things that you're going to use every day and that are going to keep the language alive, we need to see written down around us, and they already exist. Now, I could understand, and there is a certain comparison that can be made to Wales and to the Welsh Assembly. But that's only valid up to a point, because, of course, in Wales, that's one of their working languages in the Assembly. Everything is translated. They have simultaneous interpreters, so people have got headphones on in case you don't speak Welsh, or in case you don't want to speak in English. And literally everything is produced in duplicate in every publication and the documents, and it employs very many people to do that. That's not what we're talking about today. And if we were talking about that, I could understand some of the reservations. It may well be that we get to a point where that happens, but I don't think that's really what we're talking about. I think it's the fact that we want to recognise this culture, and it's just to complement what we're already doing in the wider society, and government's already doing it. So again, I think it's strange. Deputy Massol's made it quite clear that it's when signage is replaced, and that the big cost that comes with signage is the replacement of it. And if you're going to replace it, that's when you get to decide what text you put on it. We all know when you get printing done, it's not the amount that you get done, it's the fact that you need something new, and the words on the page are not what you get charged for. You get charged for the number of prints you get. So I can understand the arguments, but there's another thing which I think I would hope that the sports minister would get behind, is that this is a really great opportunity for branding for sports in the island. And it's not going to, I don't think it's going to cost anything. It's going to actually be another way to market Jersey. So when you've got a very successful rugby team, and hopefully we're going to get more visible football teams and football leagues going on in Jersey, or whether it's the Commonwealth Games or whether it's the Island Games, we can have our own language out there, and it can be not just attached to the emails, but it may well be on the sports branding. And I think there's great possibilities here for the business types who love all that, and I think that's great. We need all that. But that's not my prime driver, but I think that's an added bonus. So if we're not going to do it simply to protect the language from a cultural point of view, let's do it because there are so many reasons to get behind this, and it's a simple step, it's complementary. And if it starts to appear that it's disproportionate, I'll be one of the first people to say, hang on, we need to get a grip of this, but that's not what's being proposed here. It's a proportionate step. I don't think it's going to cost any extra money, but the value that it will bring to the island and to our sense of identity and self-worth, I think is going to be immeasurable.
Any other member wish to speak? Then I call on Deputy Masson. Sorry, oh, Senator Farmer. Just in time.
Just in time, thank you. So I have to say, notwithstanding my wholesome support for what we're trying to do culturally with Sherry, I'm a reluctant supporter of this on similar grounds to those expressed by Senator Pallett. But I'm going to support it today because I think the important piece of work that has to be done is to produce some sensible guidelines. We're not talking about changing all of the road signs, and I wanted to be clear on that. This amendment says let's produce some sensible guidelines to ensure that we're giving it the relevant prominence in our culture and in our society. So I just wanted to make that point, and I would expect that as the ministerial team responsible for arts and culture, Deputy Teddy and I will work closely with Deputy Masson and any other members who want to be involved in putting these guidelines together. And if necessary, and if we can't agree, if necessary, we can ask the States Assembly to agree them. I just wanted to make the point, whatever we put in place has to be sensible, practical, and we don't want, I mean, whilst I admire what the Welsh Assembly have done in many instances, if you ask a number of people that work in the public sector in Wales, they possibly went too far with what they did and it ended up costing them huge sums of money, and we want to avoid that. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Gruville.
Thank you, sir. I had been trying to get to speak to you after the Deputy of St Martin's speech, and then it was followed by Senator Pallett and a sort of lukewarm speech from the Senator Farnham, Minister for Tourism. I would have thought is embracing this opportunity to show who we are, our identity, surely. I mean, goodness me, the opportunities in sport, culture, tourism, education, can't you see it? Can't they see it, sir? I know you can. But we need to nurture this. We cannot just sit back and allow it to die. And Deputy Masson has come forward, in my opinion, with a very sensible, measured proposition, as did Deputy Tadier. I mean, no one is going to give a speech in Gerrier if they're trying to win over an argument. It's always going to be the odd word and the odd phrase. But really, we need to embrace this and be proud of it. It's our identity. And please, just sometimes we've got to recognise it's not just knowing the cost of everything, but we need to recognise the value as well. I would just say that the common sense bit that Deputy Masson is charging the civil service to do, I would say perhaps there should be some guidelines so that we don't see sort of a flurry of spending here and there when it's not truly necessary. We all understand exactly what he means. There's sort of welcome signs hither and yon in departments and what have you. But it might just, as I say, need a few guidelines. But I don't know why we've been debating this quite so long. This is our heritage, for goodness sake. I mean, I travel to Scotland quite often, and when I leave the airport there, you are under no misapprehension of what Scotland's about. It's about bagpipes, whiskey, Aran jumpers, thistle, shortbread, you name it. What have we got? What have we got at our airport? I mean, really, a few books about. We've got a dinosaur. We've got a few books about World War II, the Beast of Jersey. I mean, really, for goodness sake, people, let's be proud.
Deputy St Peter.
I'd rather not follow that, actually. Thank you, sir. Deputy Tadei is the most relevant word so far. It's called branding. And anybody who is discussing the cost or the value of branding, just go and ask Nike the value of the tick. Go and ask Coca-Cola the value of that shaped bottle. And as we are clearly about to, the UK are exiting Europe, we have a great opportunity to rebrand ourselves on the global market, not just inwardly, global market, to state that we are independent, but we are maintaining our allegiance to the crown, and fiercely defend that and fight for that independence, and an opportunity simply to rebrand ourselves on the global hemisphere. I think we should just go ahead, regardless of the perceived extra costs. Who knows the value of branding?
Deputy Mary.
By my immediate neighbour, that I confess that I do have sympathised with the comments made by Senator Pallett and Deputy Lewis. That is not to say that my enthusiasm for Islam is any less than anyone else in the Assembly, but what does this particular motion do? We are already able, in branding terms, to promote anything we want. We don't have to have this proposition supported to enable us to have signs at Jersey Airport. Ports of Jersey already do that. And I do urge caution that, yes, let's brand ourselves, let's promote Jersey. We hosted the Island Games without any problems, I recall, without support of this proposition. And I simply suggest that we should not maintain that opposition to this proposition denotes any less enthusiasm for the Jersey language. It's not, but I do urge caution in the sense that we may well be spending money which we can afford to do at present. Even without this proposition, we are able to do it as and when the time comes. So I think on that basis I shall oppose the proposition.
Deputy St Martin rather than Deputy Lewis. Deputy, please. Does any other member wish to speak? Then I call on Deputy Masson to reply.
Thank you, sir. And I thank members who have contributed to this debate and the one on the amendment. I think we had some very personal accounts from members, and it was absolutely worthwhile to contribute that. And whilst there was a lot of discussion about looking backwards, it was refreshing that a lot of members wanted to concentrate on looking forwards and actually where this is going to take us. It's interesting that Senator Pallett quoted the Jérier plan, and on page 16 of the Jérier plan, you know, it does talk about to work with states' cultural departments to encourage the use of Jérier within the states of Jersey, to promote the use of Jérier within heritage sites, and to work with businesses in Jersey to promote Jérier, for example, like signage. So therefore, I'm going to vote against your proposition. Okay, and this is precisely why I brought this proposition, because yes, we do have a Jérier plan, and I'm not entirely convinced that actually it's necessarily being acted upon. And therefore I thought it was quite useful, instead of having a document that's been issued by the government, to have something backed by the Assembly, because exactly as Deputy Southern said, this is about Jérier. This is about giving Jérier within Jersey the status that it deserves. That's what this proposition is about. And I thank the other contributions from other members talking about how, you know, this is about taking Jersey forward, this is about branding for the island, this is about appreciating our history and our heritage. The cost concerns, I mean, it's interesting that the former Environment Minister, you know, made a big thing about cost, and in fact he was one of the ones leading the campaign to reduce the amount of signage and clutter within the island. I don't necessarily disagree with that. Here is an opportunity to look at that thing and actually assess, do we need signs in the first place? And from the money you might save from not putting up certain signs, you might be able to reinvest and put Jérier in another sign. So swings and roundabouts. I think members pretty much made up their minds. I don't think there's much I can offer. I do thank, however, the Constable of St Martin for her contribution, showing that actually where there is a political will, it can happen within the community. And what I'd hope is members of this Assembly will give Jérier that political will, give it the encouragement to the teachers teaching it, to the students learning it, give them that support, sir, in this, the UNESCO Year of Indigenous Languages. Thank you, sir, and I ask for the appel.
Deputy, it's a matter for you, but do you wish to take paragraph 1, because bear in mind it's now the amended proposition, and Deputy Teddy is not quite right to say that it was now approved that one could speak in Jérier in this Assembly, because that has yet to be approved by the Assembly, as all that's happened so far is that his amendment was agreed. So do you wish to take paragraph 1 and paragraph 2 separately, or do you wish to take...
Sir, I'll take it en bloc, thank you.
Right. Then the vote is on the amended proposition of Deputy Mussell, Jérier promotion by the public sector. I invite members to return to their seats and ask the referee to open the voting. If all members have the opportunity of voting, I ask the greffier to close the voting and can announce the proposition has been adopted. 39 votes in favour, 6 votes against.
May I thank members for their support.
Greffier, please.
Those voting contre, Senator Pallett, the Connétable of St Mary, Deputy Southern, Higgins, St Martin and St Mary.
Before lunch, I raised the question of whether or not what Deputy Labby suggested he might want to propose his proposition in relation to the future hospital as amended by the Treasury Minister. It would be helpful, no doubt, for those who thinking in advance about the speeches they might make to know what the process is going to be. Does the Assembly agree that Deputy Labby may do that? Very well. That's what we'll do then. So the proposition, Deputy Labby, you will make as amended by the Treasury Minister. After that, we will deal with the amendment of the Connétable of St Helier, After that, we'll deal with the amendment of Deputy Morrell, and then at the same time then deal with the Council of Ministers, and then we will return to your original proposition as amended or not, as the case may be. Right. So now we come to the draft European Union United Kingdom Exit Miscellaneous Amendment Regulations P148, lodged by the Minister for External Relations. I ask the greffier to read the citation of the draft.
Draft European Union United Kingdom Exit Miscellaneous Amendments Jersey Regulations 2000. The states, in pursuance of Article 5A of the European Union Legislation Implementation Jersey Law 2014, have made the following regulations.
Minister, you should propose the principles.
If I may, sir, the purpose of these miscellaneous amendments are, in effect, simply to fix, if I may use that term, existing regulations to preserve the original intended policy effect. Generally speaking, the UK has to be added into these regulations because after Brexit, the UK will no longer be a member state of the European Union and therefore is not covered when we use such a phrase, and therefore has to be added in as a standalone country. And therefore, so these amendments are technical in nature. They do, however, cover extremely important areas such as data flow from Jersey to the United Kingdom. Hopefully they are straightforward, sir. If I quickly run through them now, the first one relates to employers' liability insurance. Secondly, adds the customs territory of the UK so that goods imported are covered by the protections against false trade descriptions. Thirdly, it means that we treat the UK as an EEA country so that our data can flow to the UK, as I said earlier. Fourthly, recognising the UK stock exchanges under the Control and Housing of Work law. Fifthly, allowing us to continue to move waste to the UK. And sixthly, again, is in relation to UK stock exchanges as being recognised exchanges. So I maintain the principles.
Seconded. Does any member wish to speak on the principles? Those in favour of adopting the principles kindly show. Those against, the principles are adopted. Deputy Morrell, does your panel wish to scrutinise these?
No, thank you, sir.
You propose them en bloc, Minister?
If I may, sir, I have just quickly gone through each of the regulations and their purpose, and I will endeavour to answer any questions that members may have, sir. Thank you.
Seconded. Does any member wish to speak? Deputy Morrell.
Thank you, sir. It's just to give some reassurance to the Assembly that the Brexit Review Panel, and actually also with the Economic Affairs External Relations hat on, we have looked at these regulations and gone through them one by one, and we are satisfied with them. Thank you, sir.
Any other member wish to speak? Wish to reply, Minister?
No, I thank the Deputy for his comments. So he's absolutely right, and I hope that as we run up to the big day, as it were, we'll be able to continue working in a similarly productive manner. So,
those members in favour of adopting regulations 1 to 5 kindly show. 1 to 7, I'm sorry, kindly show. The appel is called for. Sorry, I'll invite members to return to their seats. The vote is on regulations 1 to 7 of the European Union UK Exit Miscellaneous Amendments Jersey Regulations. And ask the greffier to open the voting. All members have had the opportunity of voting. Ask the greffier to close the voting and announce the regulations 1 to 7 have been adopted. 43 votes in favour, no votes against. Propose them in third reading, Minister.
if I may, so members will be aware, of course, that these changes are necessary whether the United Kingdom leaves under the terms of the withdrawal agreement, or if there is no deal forthcoming. Members will also see, sir, that the provisions for bringing them into force remain flexible to deal with any eventuality between now and the 29th of March as well, sir. So I maintain them in third reading.
Seconded. Any member wish to speak in third reading? Those in favour of adopting the regulations in third reading kindly show. Those against, the regulations are adopted in third reading. We now come to draft amendment number 38 of Standing Orders of the States of Jersey, P1 of this year, lodged by the Privileges and Procedures Committee. Greffier.
Draft Amendment number 38 of the Standing Orders of the States of Jersey. The States, under Article 48 of the States of Jersey Law 2005, make the following amendment to the Standing Orders of the States of Jersey.
Chairman.
Thank you, sir. These amendments to standing orders would delete 3 provisions which, for various reasons, are no longer necessary. The amendments are presented in 2 parts. Part 1 would delete paragraphs 2D, 17A and 17B from Standing Order 117. Standing Order 117 as a whole sets out the appointment process for ministers. As part of that process, the Chief Minister Designate is required to give the greffier of the States a list of his or her intended nominees for ministerial positions. There is then an obligation on the greffier to distribute this list to all States members, and paragraph 2D simply says that this distribution may be done by email. This paragraph was no doubt included at a time when the default position was to distribute documents in hard copy, but the paragraph is no longer needed. It is explicit in standing orders that distribution by the greffier means distribution by any means, including email. Standing Order 1(3) makes that clear. For the avoidance of doubt, if paragraph 2D is deleted, the greffier will still be able to distribute the list of ministerial nominees by email. Paragraph 17A currently places a requirement on any member elected unopposed as a minister to provide the greffier with a written statement of their proposed policies. Paragraph 17B states the greffier must then distribute the statement to all members. PPC is proposing to delete these 2 paragraphs, and there is an amendment from Deputy Morel on this point, which I'll deal with after he has made his amendment. Part 2 of PPC's amendments would delete paragraph 2(c) from Standing Order 141A. This follows the proposition I brought last year. Deleting the paragraph would allow members to sit on both the Planning Committee and the Environment, Housing and Infrastructure Scrutiny Panel. The Assembly agreed last year that should be the case, and Part 2 of the amendment would bring that decision into force. So I make the proposition.
Seconded. Well, then we come to the amendment of Deputy Morel. I'll ask the greffier to read the amendment.
Page 7, Amendment 1. For Amendment 1, substitute 1. Standing Order 117, Ministers' Selection Process Amendment. In Standing Order 117 of the Standing Orders of the States of Jersey, A, paragraph 2D is deleted. B, in paragraph 17A, for the words paragraph 5, there is substituted this standing order.
Deputy Morel.
Thank you, sir. If members of the Assembly are wondering why I brought this amendment, initially so was I. And it's because, understandably, Deputy Labby and the rest of the Privileges and Procedures Committee are undertaking really what is a tidying up exercise. And one of the main things they wanted to do by deleting paragraphs 17A, I believe was because there's an unlevel playing field in the situation at the moment. If you are a minister who is unchallenged for your position, your ministerial position, you have to provide a written statement to the Assembly that then goes online. If you happen to have been challenged, then you don't have to provide a written statement, as I understand it. And so, understandably, that's an unlevel playing field, and the Privileges and Procedures Committee decided that they thought they should level everything up. And that is quite an understandable position. But what I saw when I was reading through the committee's proposition was an opportunity not just to level the playing field, but actually, in my view, to go a step further and to improve the situation and improve in terms of transparency and accountability. So whereas the current proposition, unamended by the Privileges and Procedures Committee, dispenses with any need for ministers to provide a written statement of their proposed policies after their election, that's what will happen with the proposition as it stands. My amendment, instead, puts a duty on all elected ministers to provide a written statement of their proposed policies, and for that to be put online. I've done this because I see that as being far more transparent and enabling accountability. Now, one of the reasons for the committee's decision to, one of the reasons behind the committee's thinking was that the ministers, whether they are challenged or not, they have to provide a statement in the Assembly, and they speak through that. They then face a certain period of time of questions. And of course, all of that is recorded and put into Hansard. My problem with that is that actually, technically, they may not mention their policies within those statements or within those questions. I accept it's unlikely, but it's possible. And then the other aspect of it is, as a member of the public, and before I was a member of this Assembly, as a member of the public, I often look through Hansard trying to find the piece of information that I was looking for that a member said once upon a time in the Assembly. It's not easy to do so. Whereas I felt that by taking this opportunity, we could ask all the ministers who are elected, however and regardless of how they're elected, within 3 days of being elected to ministerial office, they have to provide a written statement of their proposed policies, and they are put on the State Assembly website in perpetuity. And so over that term, they can be held to account. At the end of it, when elections are coming, people can ask them, oh, you said you were going to do X, but you haven't. Please, can you explain to us why? That's the sort of thing that I think we need in a modern democracy. And so I've proposed this amendment purely as a very simple, it's an opportunistic amendment in that respect. I've seen an opportunity to do what I think is to improve the democratic process in Jersey, to improve transparency, to improve accountability. And that is exactly, and I hope this Assembly will join me in that by voting for my amendment. There is absolutely no criticism of PPC's work in that respect. I understand where they are coming from and why they did it. I just looked at it from a different angle and saw what I think is the opportunity to improve matters. And so it is all based on a technical amendment. How many of you have read that, have read the amendment, my amendment? I don't know. But I hope you will see this is an opportunity to make democratic life in Jersey better than it is now in a very simple way. There are very little costs. The resource implications are literally asking a member of the State Scref to put up those statements once every 4 years when there's whenever a ministerial office changes hands, and that is where they'll sit. So there's no real financial implications. There is a very minor resource implication. And I do hope you'll all join me in supporting my amendment. Thank you, sir.
Amendment seconded. Now open for debate. Deputy Martin.
Yes, thank you, sir. And I thank the Deputy for his explanation, and I have read the amendment. I just really need some clarification because he's saying this is being helpful. Now, over the years, we've had one person stand for minister. There's been no need to make a statement. There's been no need for questions. And people have just actually stood against that minister, sir, to literally tease out some policies and tease out some answers. So last time, sir, we had a general election on the 16th of May. We were all elected this Assembly, and there was a blanket of people who were going to be ministers after the Chief Minister was elected, and we went through that process. Now, sir, I can only speak for myself. I put forward a statement, I put forward a speech, and I put forward a lot of policies in that, and I was questioned on the Assembly of this House, sir. Assembly. Yes, I'll get there, sir. You know where I was questioned. I was here. And, sir, my problem, and I absolutely see where Deputy Morelli is coming from, because after 2 or 3 days of being elected, I got an email from the greffier, sir, saying, really, you should be putting a statement on. And I said, well, I made a statement. I put my policies. I was even asked for policies I didn't produce in my speech, sir, and asked what my opinion were. They're transparent. I was questioned. What the deputy now asks, 3 days, within 3 working days after being elected, to bring forward a policy statement. Well, sir, there's no link between that policy statement and what I actually say in this assembly. I can say, yes, and now I'm going to be Queen Midas and I'm going to give everyone gold and I'm going to do this, because there's no link, sir. I am stood here, or whoever goes for minister will be putting their policies forward. And this is where I think, under being, thinking is the deputy is helping being transparent, and it is hard to go through Hansard. Basically, I think from memory, sir, myself and the greffier said, we'll just reproduce your speech that was on Hansard and the questions you answered, and that was your policy statement. To me, that's exactly what it was, but there is, I emphasise this, unless I completely read it wrong, the policy, what I'm being examined on, that I'm standing for, is what I'm going to say in here, and all members then can question me. 3 days after, I think, I didn't really like what I said, being put under pressure by the constable over there or the deputy there. I'm going to change that policy, sir. But this is written in perpetuity for everyone to see, no matter what I said in here when I was being held to account. So I really think I see where the deputy is coming from. I'm not opposed to it. I just wanted there to be a complete link back to what any minister stands for on the policies in this assembly that they're questioned on, not 3 days to have a sort of think about it, add to or detract from. And that's where I'm coming from. I'm open to trying to support the deputy, know where he's coming from, but it actually doesn't do what he said it should do on the tin. That's my reading, sir. Thank you.
Chairman PPC.
So it's a previously stated aim of mine that I really want to make standing orders more user-friendly, more economical, and I believe that the deputy's amendment is completely unnecessary for reasons I'm about to spell out. It's quite technical. Please, I hope members will bear with me. I've written it down because I want to get it absolutely correct. Before the last election, the standing orders were changed so that everyone standing to become a minister has to make a statement to the Assembly, their pitch for the job, and then answer questions. This applies to ministers whose positions are uncontested, as well as when there is an election. This was plainly a sensible change, and it worked well when we elected ministers last June. Under the previous system, ministers who were not opposed were elected automatically, and they didn't have the opportunity to present their pitch or take questions, even if they wanted to. However, Standing Order 117 required those ministers to present the Assembly with a statement of their policies a few days after their election to being a minister. Although this gave members and the public an idea of what those ministers wanted to do in office, it was all a bit late. They're already in post. When the system was changed, this requirement for ministers elected unopposed to present the Assembly with a statement of their policies was not repealed. This was, I believe, an oversight. The GREF contacted ministers in this position to ask for their statement of policies, and most ministers simply pointed to the statement they'd already delivered in the Assembly. They had nothing extra to add, and frankly, it would be strange, as Deputy Martin was saying, if they did have some additional priorities to mention after their election, which they had chosen not to reveal when seeking election. One or two ministers did provide a written statement, and those were circulated, but can anyone really remember them now? So this is a sensible tidy-up which reduces bureaucracy without diminishing accountability, which will take place in the right place on the floor of this Assembly and at the right time when ministers are being elected. Deputy Morrell's amendment would require all ministers to make a statement about their proposed policies days after they've been elected. This achieves nothing. The change is justified on the grounds that ministers might be elected, having not mentioned their policies and not being questioned about them. But the solution to this problem lies in members' hands. My suggestion is that the first question to any ministerial candidate should be, what will be your 3 main priorities? The answer will be recorded in Hansard, and members can decide if they agree with those priorities or not when they vote. And for those reasons, I reject Deputy Morrell's amendment.
Deputy Teddy.
Thanks, sir. When I read PPCs, I thought that was sensible initially, trying to level the playing field. It's just clearing up an anomaly, and it evolved in a particular way. But then reading and listening to Deputy Morrell, his is preferable, and I'll explain the reasons why. First of all, it's being said, oh, this is going to be a statement given a few days after the person's been elected. Well, what is the strategic plan, the common strategic policy, the common policy of the Council of Ministers, if it isn't a joint plan which is made several days, in that case, several, I think 30 or 60 days after being elected collectively, they come up with their statement, and they've given their individual statements. And I think the point is, when a person stands for minister in this assembly, first of all, they don't know whether they're going to be contested until the day. They may be contested, they may not. It may well be someone who suspects they're not going to be contested, and they may give a different speech, because the purpose of giving a speech to this assembly for any position is to convince the assembly that you're the right person for that job. And it may well be that you're light on policy. It's possible to get elected as a minister in this assembly and be very light on policy, because you can use rhetoric, you can aspire, and that's quite nothing necessarily wrong with that. It's right that at the correct time that policy is padded out. I would go further to saying it's entirely possible to get elected to this assembly and be very light on policy as well, but I don't need to say that at the moment, because we're talking about ministerial elections. So it could well be that somebody comes in, and it might well be that if there's no one else contesting it, you may stand up at the last minute and say, I want to give this person a run for their money, because actually I think I could do a better job for it. And you make some policies up, you make some ideas up on the hoof, and then actually you hear some questions after you've been elected, if you're elected unopposed, and then you say, actually, I hadn't thought about those. Those are some really good ideas. Maybe I need to incorporate that into my policy statement. Once you're elected, you go and talk to your officers and say, well, actually, I've got these ideas, but how do they pad out? And after a few days, you can talk to them immediately. You can talk to further Council of Minister colleagues. You might well find out that actually somebody else who you thought you were going to be working very closely with has not been elected, and the person that's been elected in that cross-cutting department is someone different who's got a completely different vision. So, for example, you might get a minister for EDTSC with responsibility for culture who's got very different ideas to an education minister, and they need to actually have a chat and decide what their way forward is. Or you might get that with the sports minister. You might well get that with a DFI minister and the environment minister. So you get a very progressive, hypothetically speaking, you get a very progressive environment minister who says, I want to sort out sustainable transport. I want Jersey to lead the world in environmental and green issues. But you get a completely useless DFI minister who doesn't seem to want to grasp the nettle of sustainable transport. Luckily, we don't have that, but you've got to cater for all possibilities. And it may well be that the environment minister says, actually, because I'm so passionate about sustainable transport, I think that needs to come into my remit. But he couldn't say that at the time because he didn't know who he'd be working with. So the statement allows him to put his ideas down within 3 days, saying, this is my team. Having sustained questioning from the Assembly, that's where I think I can give you a bit more information. And then again later on, there'll be a common strategic policy that's brought forward by the ministers. I don't know why we're making such heavy weather of this. It's a good, logical amendment. And I think that PPC should hopefully understand that argument, because Hansard and what's recorded on Hansard it can be very different to a thought-out statement after you've taken stock of the Assembly and its mood and who you're going to be working with. Entirely sensible.
Senator Gorst.
Thank you, sir. I think the chairman largely said what I was going to say, but I did want to add one other point about the evolution of how we've arrived at today. He was very careful in his wording. The truth of the matter is that when we amended standing orders prior to the last election and made it a requirement for ministers that were unopposed to make a speech and be questioned, it was an oversight to remove the requirement to then submit a statement to the GREF for publication on the website. So it wasn't an oversight. And what PPC are trying to do is correct that oversight. Deputies making point that the correction perhaps should be that every minister should issue a statement. If we look back, so when the ministerial system was first introduced, of course, and Deputy Martin made this point, I think, in her speech, or alluded to it, when it was first introduced, an individual could be nominated for a ministerial position, have no opposition, and not be required to make a speech or answer a question or submit a statement. And the remedy at that point, I believe, was to then submit a statement. The greffier is indicating that may not be the case, so I shall perhaps... that was my understanding. There was no need at that point to do so, and therefore the creation of submitting this statement was introduced. For my part, I think it's far superior that anyone standing for office, whether it's contested or not, should make a speech. That speech should, and this perhaps is where members will consider the Deputy's amendment, a speech should be about policy. And anyone standing for political office of any sort should be setting out a vision and indicating the policies that what they wish to pursue. That's not something, quite rightly, that Deputy Tadea said, that we've always been good at in this Assembly. I hope that we are getting better at it, because it is important, because it enhances democracy. For my part, sir, the Deputy is not wrong to suggest that a written statement of policies is a good thing. I'm just not sure that there will be anything different between the speech and the answering of the questions in a period of 3 days. I would hope, sir, that members, before they put their name forward or were selected by the Chief Minister to indicate they wish to stand for a position, would already have spoken to officials and spoken to colleagues about what the important issues that the departments were facing were, and also what their vision were and their policies were to deliver that. The chairman of PPC said he's already forgotten the statement that I issued to the greffier 8 or 9 months ago. I don't take offence by that fact, sir, but I recall largely using my speech as the basis for my statement. And it's a matter of whether members see it as correcting the oversight and the anomaly, or they wish the speech to be formed into a statement which is issued and then published on the state's website. In a way, it's slightly as broad as it is long, sir. But the whole point of the PPC's proposal is to amend the anomaly that was created and the position that was not considered, sir.
Deputy Pershad.
Thank you, sir. I must start by reassuring the Minister for External Relations that I do in fact still have the copy of the statement that he submitted at the time. And I studied it very carefully and actually took it with me to our quarterly meetings that we had with the Minister. So I can assure him that it was not time wasted and in fact was taken very seriously. And on top of that was actually incredibly useful. Because, of course, it's very helpful to hear someone outline their policies verbally and to ask them questions. But as we can recall, at the time when we were going through this process of electing our new Chief Minister and subsequent ministers, there were time limits. And I myself suffered from those time limits. I did not get to ask my question of the External Relations Minister during the election of the chief ministers because of the quite right requirement for there to be the equal amount of time given to each candidate. But that did mean, sir, that I was denied the opportunity to ask my question and seek the advice and evidence that I needed for my reassurance from those candidates. And subsequently, receiving that document proved incredibly useful and valuable in terms of some of those things. I'm a bit confused as to why there is any resistance about this, simply because it seems very, very straightforward to put to paper what one is willing to say out loud, particularly in this room where everything is on record and everything is said in a meaningful and sincere manner. So I am confused as to why that seems so difficult or unpalatable to members, because if I were to run for a ministry, I certainly would want to know myself what my policies were before I stood, and I certainly would want to make clear to members what my intentions were. And obviously, in an ideal world, you'd actually want that information before you choose those ministers. I think one of the most overwhelming and kind of baffling moments for me upon entering this career was to discover that one of the very first things that you do is possibly one of the most important things you do in your time here, which is elect your chief minister and his or her ministry. And that decision is, as a new member, that is based on very little knowledge. As people that you have not worked with before, so you don't know where their moral compass sits, you don't know about their work ethic, you don't know about their perspectives and attitudes towards certain things. All you have is that finite amount of time in the room. And as someone alluded to previously, this is a space where we do a lot of convincing and we use a lot of persuasive rhetoric. The function of this room is debate, and in debate we are here to spar with one another with our words. And actually that's not the best platform to truly understand someone's well thought out and well constructed policy ideas. Of course, you cannot be expected to not change your mind about the direction which you wish to take. And that's the case in any context. Should I say, well, actually, I on day one, this is my policy, and then by day 50 or 60 realise I was wrong to think this way about this issue, or I've learnt more about this since then, I've developed my ideas, and I wish to change my direction slightly. That is completely understandable. And in fact, I'd be incredibly worried if no one was that reflective and everyone just said, right, day one, here's my policies, and I'm going to unwaveringly stick to them for the next 4 years, because otherwise I might not get elected again. No one is going to expect that. But what one does expect is a clear idea of where people stand, how they think, and what kinds of things they wish to achieve in their role. Because as I said, sir, it's very useful when you come to a quarterly hearing or questions without notice or any of those situations where you do have the opportunity to scrutinise the work of ministers as a backbencher, that you have that document in front of you. And as has been discussed before, Hansard is fine for us, but it's incredibly difficult to navigate for the public. And it's something that is impenetrable to some people. It's very hard to find what you're looking for. And having each minister present their statement, which is summarising probably the things they said anyway, for me is a very straightforward, simple task. It's not a big pull on resources. It's a step in the right direction. Ideally, you'd want it before you decide and before you're in the room, but we're not talking about that today. We're talking about what the proposition is, which is to bring that level of accountability to the fore in the first place. And I really don't understand the issue with that. I think the benefits far outweigh the inconveniences. Thank you, sir.
So I was just going to ask clarification from yourself, if I might, just on the wording of this amendment. Is there anything in the wording of this amendment that would stop elected ministers from simply copying and pasting their speech for the election to be their written submission?
There's nothing in this amendment that does that.
And is there also anything in the wording of it that would prevent the GREF from using the Assembly website to draw attention to those speeches in Hansard, separate from the usual Hansard system, so that they would be easier to find?
I'm not sure the greffier would regard that as part of his job. I think that's a matter for Gref administration, and I would have thought probably that's going a step too far.
Exactly, thank you, sir.
Deputy Young.
Sir, I feel rather confused with this debate, and then maybe there might be other members. And while the debate was continuing on, I was trying to look up the standing orders, and I noticed on the Jersey Law website that we've in fact made 7 changes to these standing orders in the last 12 months. And of course, there is no consolidated law. One has to read through every change and work out how it works and so on. It all gets incredibly convoluted. Now, I'm struggling to see what the gain is and what we're trying to achieve with the amendment. But I do understand the logic and what Deputy Pershard said and the implications of Senator Mesick's question, which is obviously designed the fact that we don't have a system here where members are, where we have a strange system whereby the objectives of government are set after the ministers have been elected, which is really very difficult, it's very unusual. But for me, in the process that I underwent, in fact, before I say that, I shared, the first time I came in this assembly, and I absolutely shared Deputy Pershard's concern. The very first assembly, virtually, that you get elected to, you're effectively setting the whole shape of government and the policies for the next 3 years. And that's really a very, very high-risk thing. And therefore, we rely on what members say. Well, I personally, in the approach that I took, I personally feel, in the absence of any other system, bound by what I said to the electorate in my speech, and I published it on my own website. I accept the fact that I couldn't guarantee that I would deliver it, because it's dependent, as Deputy Tadier said, upon other ministers and the way in which the strategic plan comes out. But I still feel bound by those statements, and for the best, what I sought to do was to convey to members, if they went with me as opposed to the other candidate, this is the aspiration, this is the intention I would try and fulfil. I feel bound by that. So what I'm still looking for is how we can have a change of standing orders, which after you've been elected in office, then allows for some different statement to come along. And I think most, I'd like to feel that everybody would do that with honour. They would not doctor, manipulate, miss out inconvenient bits or what. But I'm still troubled by that as a principle, that this follows after the election. And if we need to have statements, we need to be sure, in my view, we have them before the states make an election. Before. And that's why I kind of feel, without really understanding the why, because I said I was confused, that I think this is what PPC are trying to do, to create a situation where they tidy that up. But, I'll wait to hear what Deputy Morell says, because I may have missed this, but I'm troubled with the principle of statements being made, important policy statements, after the states have made a decision to elect somebody with a really important office that's going to carry on for a number of turns. And, I think that's for me, that's a worry.
Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. I'm also slightly confused by how complex and technical we're getting over this amendment. The way I'm seeing it, this amendment is about some form of clarifying statement or of policy or intent that goes to the public after the election, and simply to increase our contact with the electorate after a minister is elected. And it's as simple as that. Surely that cannot be difficult, because ministers will make speeches in the Assembly, and if they don't make speeches, publish a statement anyway. And to be quite frank, how do you choose a minister if you don't know their policies and their intent? So all of that should have happened. This is just another part of the process at the end that gives some clarity to the electorate and those outside the Assembly, which I think is probably quite an important thing for us to do, given the view that is sometimes taken of this Assembly, which I think as a new member is unfair on those of us who have come into the Assembly itself.
Any other member wish to speak? Deputy Wickenden.
I thought I'd just maybe ask a question of the Solicitor General, if possible, which is if Deputy Morell's amendment is adopted and these statements are had to be made, because it's done through this standing orders law, what legal standing would these statements have?
Mr.
The answer is I don't think they would be enforceable in court.
I agree with that. Does any other member wish to speak? Conor Thompson, one.
Thank you, sir. I also share Deputy Young's concern. I've listened with interest to Deputy Pershaw's eloquent speech on the subject, but I cannot get away from the point that if a minister makes a statement in the House where he's accountable and is then subject to question, that there should be any suggestion or reason that he should want to change that and publish something after the event. That is what he's elected on, and that is what he should stand by. And I have a big problem with something being published after the event, which may or may not be different, even if it does clarify what he said in the House. What you say in this House is what you should be accountable for, and I certainly will not be supporting Dr. Morrell's amendment.
Which House is that?
Sorry, I beg your pardon. This Assembly, sir.
Deputy Teddy.
Thank you, sir. It's just a quick point of clarification, sir, because I've spoken, but it's either a point of order or for the Attorney General, I'm not sure which. It's to ask whether the statement would constitute an official document and whether that would be covered by parliamentary privilege and essentially, or whether it's just would be, maybe it's something for the Deputy, but it's to know the nature of the document in question and its official status or not.
So as we are asking the Solicitor General's a question, and I think I did probably start this hair running, and to me, I have no problem with what the Deputy is trying to do. My point was, and I'm asking now the Solicitor General, could the statement 3 days after in your policy document be entirely different? Now, might be your last term, you might have 4 years as a minister. I'm asking a legal point. Could it be entirely different from what you've said in this Assembly, sir?
May I add a clause to that question, sir? So if they can be entirely different, would the verbal statement made in the Assembly, which assumedly is on record, assumedly it would not fall away or be any less valid, because everything you say in this room, as we know, is on record, and you can't retrospectively take back what you've said. So assumedly that still stands, sir. Does that still stand, sir? Thank you.
Mr. General, would you like to help the Assembly on this?
So I think in response to Deputy Martin's question, in response to Deputy Martin's questions, again, to me, these are essentially political questions and they're not really enforceable in court. As regards whether or not these documents are covered by the privilege of the Assembly, I would just need a little bit, can I just check the position of a few minutes just to check that before I give my answer? I think they probably would, but I just want to check.
Have you got more questions for the Solicitor General?
No, sir, I thought I'd speak.
Well, then you are in the queue. Senator Farnham.
I'm happy to give way to Senator Moore, sir.
There you are, Senator Moore.
Okay, sorry, sir, I hadn't realised that there was a queue in operation, but I did think that I ought to share some views from the Chairman's Committee about what is essentially a political matter here. And I think actually Deputy Pershard had already hit the nail on the head. And with the very best of intentions, perhaps the Deputy Martin is obfuscating slightly in that by raising the point that one could publish after the event a different statement to that which had been said in the Assembly, no doubt scrutiny panels will be looking and comparing and contrasting, and we most certainly will after this debate, sir, those policy statements with what has been said in the Assembly. And it is an important and integral part of the scrutiny role to have that paper trail, that trail of what has been promised in the Assembly prior to a vote. And it forms a very important basis of the process that follows once a minister has been appointed to their post, sir.
Senator Farnham.
Thank you, sir. I'm not quite sure what Deputy Morell is trying to achieve, and I am very pleased to work closely with him on a number of issues, and he will know, as he and his panel question the Minister of the Department for Economic Development, Tourism, Sport and Culture, that we work in an environment that is changing. The economy changes, conditions change regularly, policies and procedures have to change regularly. Every word that is spoken in this assembly is recorded on Hansard, and whilst it might not always be easy to get into the detail, it is recorded, and that is a key point, and it's recorded for a reason. So we can be held to account and questioned, every member, on every word they speak in this assembly, should it be desired by a scrutiny panel or a member of the public or another member. So, referring to Deputy Young's comments, that, you know, could he be suggesting that states members or aspiring politicians might say one thing in a manifesto and then get elected and do something completely different? Well, I've never known that to happen. What I'm trying to say, notwithstanding Deputy Pershard's excellent speech, what I'm trying to say is, do we really need to do this? And I understand the sentiment behind it, but you know, given the fact that once we are here, at the work of the Assembly is fluid, and for ministers and assistant ministers and scrutiny panels, it is fluid work. So whilst we all make policies and statements with the best intentions, they do change at times. So I'm just wondering what is the purpose of having that particular statement in that format at that time, which by the time it needs to be, or members of the public want to scrutinise it, the backdrop has changed somewhat. And of course, then, once we are all elected as a government and an assembly, we then go on to agree together and collectively new plans, new policies and new strategies, which could override the policies and the wish lists of the ministers at the time they were elected. And of course, between a manifesto, a speech, then there is, of course, the trading that goes on to be elected as a minister. We all know it happens, and I'm not being critical. It's just a way, it's just political life. So I know of members that have changed policies and reorganised their position, you know, to get into office, and there's nothing wrong with that. So the point I'm trying to make is, what is to be gained by taking a statement of time 3 days after election, which could be meaningless a little while down the road? Thank you.
Solicitor General, are you ready to?
Yes, sir. Thank you for giving me a couple of minutes just to check in relation to the question concerning legal privilege. My view is that these statements are covered by the Assembly's privilege in Article 34 of the States of Jersey law. I think the wording there is broad enough to cover them. In relation to the question concerning what would happen if a member completely changed their position within 3 days of making a speech, setting out their policies, and then completely changing their position, I maintain the view that is not a question or a matter that is enforceable in a court of law. The consequences would be political, and that member would face potentially a vote of no confidence in this Assembly if that were to happen. So I hope that assists.
Any other member wish to speak? Then I call on Deputy Morell to reply.
Thank you, sir. And thank you, my fellow members of this Assembly, for making my first intervention in legislation so entertaining and so interesting, because this is the first amendment or proposal that I have brought to the Assembly. And I didn't expect it, because, as I said at the beginning, this, I know initially this was an administrative amendment by the Procedures and Privileges Committee, or vice versa, as the case goes. Anyway, a PPC, exactly. Anyway, to go on, interesting questions, but to go on, it may come as some surprise to members, but my amendment isn't about us. It's not about ministers, it's not about members of this assembly. My amendment is focused 100% on the public, and it is focused on giving the public the ability to hold us to account in just one easier way than we currently do at the moment. I have heard, yes, that what I say here, you know, this is the record and it must not change. That is fine, but it is not easy. It is not easy to do so. It is not easy for members of the public, some who, as Senator Ferguson will often tell us, do not have online access either, but my proposition doesn't help with that, but my amendment doesn't help with that. But it is not easy for members of the public to use Hansard to find and to then hold ministers to account. We also operate in a system which is not a party system. Personally, I'm fine with that, but one of the drawbacks of not having a party system is that we have ministerial government in which we, as members of the public, do not know what individual ministers stand for. We have, as Deputy Tadia said, the Common Strategic Policy. How many months after the ministerial election that came out? Was it November? And the elections were in July? You know, so if things, Senator Farnham, haven't changed between July and November, then, you know, if you're happy with that situation, then surely you must be happy with a situation of just 3 days, if you're willing to let 5 months pass between statements, essentially. As far as the idea that you may make a speech here and change your statement for the website, to be held on the website, well, that is your choice as minister. You could do that. But members of the public, and I know there are members of the public in the gallery right now who will spot that straight away and will make sure that we as other members of the Assembly do know that your speech and your statement on the website are two very, very different things. It won't go miss. We won't miss that. And as Senator Moore said, scrutiny will certainly spot that as well. So I do ask members to think of this. You know, as I said, this wasn't an amendment I brought because I was desperately trying to, you know, change PPC's mind or anything like this. PPC were making a change which I thought could be improved upon, and it could be improved upon for the benefit of the public. When they had, and members of the public, you have all heard, members have all heard that complaints about not knowing what ministers stand for. And so this is about speaking to them and giving them a simple place, an easy place that they know they can go and just see what the Minister for the Environment, the Minister for Infrastructure, the Minister for External Relations, what they said they are going to stand for in office. Yes, it is after the election, but that is because this is not about us. This is not about us making a choice of minister. This is about the public just being able to easily find what ministers said they want to stand for in office. I don't believe there will be any sort of conflict with changes. I mean, yes, life does change. But again, if that argument is to hold, then you know the CSP is worthless. So that I believe that you cannot logically hold to that argument and still say there's value in the CSP. So I do ask members to support the amendment precisely because it will help members of the public have greater trust in us because they will understand how they can hold ministerial government to account just that little bit more. It is such a simple change, and it is not onerous, as Senator Mezek suggested when speaking to the bailiff. You can just copy and paste. It's that simple. You could just do a few bullet points, as I've said in the report. This is what I stand for, A, B, C, D. There you go. It really is not difficult. And if you are worried about what you said in the Assembly changing between you saying it and you writing your statement, then I suggest you just write your statement very quickly after you made your speech, because that would be the easier way around it. Copy and paste, and there is no problem at all. My worry is that we are going to use lots of excuses for not doing something that will simply make life a little bit easier for members of the public to understand the work we do within the states of Jersey and the government of Jersey. And this is just a very simple opportunity to change that and to make it a little bit easier for our islanders, all 105,000 of them, to understand the work we do and to have a little bit more trust in us. Thank you, sir, and I make the amendment.
Those in favour, the appeal is called for. Invite members to return to their seats. The vote is on the amendment of Deputy Morell, and I ask the greffier to open the voting. If all members have had the opportunity of voting, I ask the greffier to close the voting. The amendment's been defeated. 21 votes in favour, 24 against.
Can we hear the lists, please?
Those voting for, Senators Moore and Pallett, the Connétables of St Saviour and St Bralard and St Martin, Deputies Martin, Southern, Grouville, Tadier, Higgins, St Martin, Doublé, Wickenden, Morale, Guida, the Hegera, Ayer, Perchard, Ward, Alves and Pamplin. And those voting contre, Senators Gorst, Farnham, Ferguson, Lafondre, Valois and Mezek, the Connétables of St Clement, St Lawrence, St John, St Peter, St Mary, St Juan, Deputies Lewis, Masson, Pinnell, St Juan, Labby, St Mary, Truscott, Young, Ash, St Peter, Trinity and St John.
Very well, we now return to the main proposition, draft amendment number 38, brought by PPC, and does any member wish to speak? If not, those in favour of adopting the amendment kindly show. Those against, the proposed amendment of standing orders is adopted. We now come to the Jersey Employment and Discrimination Tribunal appointment of members, P2, lodged by the Minister for Social Security, and I ask the greffier to read the proposition.
The states are asked to decide whether they are of opinion, in accordance with the Employment and Discrimination Tribunal Jersey Regulations 2014, to appoint the following persons as members of the Jersey Employment and Discrimination Tribunal, each for a period of 5 years to begin on 1st of March 2019. Ms Jennifer Bridge, Mr Michael Delahaye, OBE, Mr Simon Nash, Mrs Roisin Pittman, Advocate Fraser Robertson, Mrs Hannah Westmacott.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. Yes, and I'm very pleased to propose the appointment of 6 new members to the Employment and Discrimination Tribunal, subject to approval. The 2 deputy chairmen and 4 lay members would be appointed for a 5-year term starting on the 1st of March this year. Members of this tribunal, sir, hear complaints made under the employment and discrimination laws. This includes claims for wages owed, minimum wage, holiday pay, unfair dismissal, redundancy and discrimination on grounds of race, age and disability. So at the end of the year, we advertised for these posts and we were grateful to receive good quality applicants, and I accepted the recommendations of the recruitment panel. The Jersey Appointments Commission have confirmed that the process was conducted in accordance with its guidelines. Just for information, sir, we had 12 good applicants, 9 were interviewed. Out of those 12, there were 6 men and 6 women, and appointed, to be appointed today are 3 men and 3 women. So I am satisfied the process. The proposed new members have the necessary skills and experience, and I am grateful for them for taking on this important responsibility. So, sir, I'm pleased to propose the appointment of 2 deputy chairmen, who are Fraser Robertson and Hannah Westmacott, and 4 lay members, Jennifer Bridge, Michael Delahaye, Simon Nash and Roisin Pittman. Sir, I ask members to support the proposition. Thank you.
Proposition seconded. Any member wish to speak? Those members in favour of adopting the proposition kindly show. Those against, the proposition is adopted. We come next to credit-related checks. P3, lodged by Deputy Mussel. I ask the greffier to read the proposition.
The states are asked to decide whether they are of opinion to agree A, to request that any ministers seeking to introduce consumer lending-related legislation will undertake to consult with lenders in the first instance whether and how account rental payment history and parish rates payment history is taken into account when assessing a borrower's creditworthiness for a mortgage. B, that any consultation will also include consideration of the appropriate use of the aforementioned data in creditworthiness assessments for other types of lending to consumers, and C, to request that the relevant ministers bring forward the necessary legislative changes for debate by the States Assembly no later than April 2022.
Deputy Masson.
Thank you, sir. Unfortunately, I haven't received comments from the Council of Ministers, so I'm not entirely sure where I stand with this proposition. But as I haven't had anything to say that we're against it, I shall proceed in that light. Basically, as members will be aware, I did lodge a previous proposition based on the work of Lord Bird in the UK, which is looking at how we can support poorer members of society get their foot on the property ladder. And I tried to bring that legislation to Jersey, only for one of the officers within the one of the departments to bring my attention to the fact that we don't actually have that legislation in Jersey, so therefore I couldn't request the change that was going forward. So I've had to take a step back and ask the Council of Ministers, the relevant ministers, to look at the way in which they are going to conduct changes to the way that they do mortgage lending. Now, the department is, as pointed out in my new proposition, points out that they're already looking at how mortgage lending should be regulated within the island. So that's already being looked at. So all I'm really asking today is that as part of that work, the Council of Ministers include the questions around whether people's rental history, their parish rate payment history be taken into account when assessing a person's creditworthiness, and will that give them a few extra points to demonstrate their history in order to perhaps gain for that qualify for the mortgage scheme that they're looking for. And basically, it comes from the thinking that poor people need credit in order to be able to do things, in order to advance themselves. And the question is, do we have systems that fairly look at that and establish that? So that's kind of what Part A of my proposition is looking to do. Again, it is just seeking consultation at the time. It's not telling the ministers that they have to do X, Y, and Z, but it is just to insert it into their consultation when looking at the establishment of the regulation going forward. And it does ask them whether that would be appropriate or not. So they can always come back and say, yes, we've looked at it. Unfortunately, this isn't the way in which we wish to proceed. That's fine, but I think it just needs to be looked at. And I, as a lowly backbencher member, don't have the resources to be able to do that. So it just seems an opportune time to wrap up that piece of work and what the department's already doing. Part B of the proposition looks to establish the principle of, well, if we are going to look at rental payments for people when they're assessed for creditworthiness, do we do that when looking for other types of lending? So do we do that for maybe for white goods, etc., etc.? Now, at the moment, that might be quite a complicated scheme. So again, what I'm asking the department to do is to establish the principle, and if practically down the line that can't be done, it becomes too complicated, perhaps too expensive for the people we're trying to help in the first place, then, and if the minister can put forward a reasonable case about that, that's absolutely fine. But I think it is just looking at how we assist poorer members of society getting their foot on the housing ladder. And then, of course, Part C is to look at this within the lifetime of the Assembly, so hopefully something will be done before we have a new Assembly and perhaps we have a different membership. So, again, it's about inserting bits into the consultation process, but not binding the minister's hands to anything in particular, but it is making sure that things are properly considered, which is what I'm asking for today, sir. And I look forward to members' questions. Thank you.
So proposition seconded. Does any member wish to speak? Contact Brella.
Thank you, sir. I understand the philosophy behind the proposition, but I just pick up one point with regard to the suggestion that parish rate payments be taken into account, and the financial and manpower implications indicating that this should be met within existing budgets. I don't believe the parishes have had any consultation on this, and I'd welcome the Deputy's proposals as to how this might take place and what the implications may be on the parishes.
Any other member wish to speak? Constable of St. Juan.
Thank you, sir. I welcome the Deputy's proposal. I'd just like to make a few comments about it. Obviously, I've had many years' experience in the banking industry, and perhaps I can shed a little bit of light on what he's trying to do. I think, firstly, just a few cautionary comments. One needs to be careful what one wishes for, because banks, unfortunately, look at Jersey as a fairly small part of their market. And if we're too prescriptive in what we suggest to them or insist they do, they will just simply turn around and say, Jersey is too expensive a market, we don't make enough profit out of this, so we're not going to lend. So we have to be cautious, and I think I very much welcome the Deputy's proposal to consult with the industry, and that was always my comment when I first saw this proposal. It is important to talk to the providers of finance in this industry, so that they continue to provide the lines of credit that we need, and indeed those at the bottom end of the scale desperately need to get their hands on. I'm almost answering the Constable of St. Broward's question, because part of lending in terms of payment of rental debts and also parish rate debts is normally assessed by reviewing the applicant's credit history and looking at any judgments that are obtained against him. And that, as a bank, is the normal process of looking at these things. I'm not entirely sure how making that less formal is actually going to help the bank's risk department, because they're only really interested in people who really do default on their payments and not particularly interested in whether they've paid it and avoided late and avoided court action. That's of less interest to their lending assessment. I mean, the principal criteria for lending is around affordability. So banks will simply look at the applicants' outgoings and see whether they're within their income means and whether they can actually afford the repayments and or the interest payments before they make a decision on whether to lend. I think it certainly also would be helpful if the Deputy was to be able to widen his proposition a wee bit and maybe look at some sort of state mortgage scheme to help people at the bottom end of the ladder. Because one of the big problems that people face in this island is the question of affordability. Banks will use a criterion known as loan to value, and also a multiples of salary we use to determine that. And unfortunately, those at the bottom end or the starting end of the bracket will find that's a problem. They cannot actually get up to the required criteria applied by the banks. Whereas a state-sponsored scheme is able to take a more lenient approach and perhaps spread the payments out in a way that banks can't do. So I would perhaps suggest to the Deputy that ought to be on the table as well. But overall, I very much welcome his initiative. I was actually the Minister that's working on this particular proposal. You know, we don't have any regulation in the island for instalment credit, and that was one of the things I identified when I came into office, and we are currently working towards that. So I hope that the Deputy will join me in working on that, and we will get the benefit of his ideas as well. Thank you, sir.
Yes, Deputy Trinity.
Yes, thank you, sir. Can I just follow on from you? Because, as you know, we set up a lot of the first lending schemes in the UK. The Building Society Act was changed in 1983 to allow people to come in at the bottom end. I was senior manager of the Cheltenham and Gloucester at the time, and we had branches all across the UK. But one of the questions that I'm putting to you is that, are you suggesting, which is following on from you, sir, are you suggesting that we as Jersey State start to lend money? Because the one thing you have to fundamentally accept, that the lending policies of the lenders are down to them. We can't dictate to the lenders what they will lend on, and that's why it's essential with what the Constable said, is that we speak to the lending authorities. If we're going to set up a scheme, dare I say it, and we were around at 100% mortgages where 10% were given and everything else, to allow them to do it. But the interesting thing is, which is one of the fundamental things, the Building Society Act changed in 1983, 85, and they started checking on rent and whether they paid the rent, whether they'd paid their taxes, and everything was on. The other thing was, as you know, the charges, we looked at the county court debts or anything like that. There's a fundamental expertise in this room, actually, with Deputy Ash as well, that have lent a lot of money across the board and across the UK, but there are restrictions in how you deal with it. But I'd be more than happy, especially with the experience gained by a lot of people that are in this room. Thank you, sir.
Any other member wish to speak? Deputy Young.
Yes, sir. I haven't had any banking experience, but I did spend some time working with a debt collection company. And obviously, credit is, there are a number of issues there I think that this proposition potentially touches on. I actually can see the purpose of this because as I understand it, for example, Jersey people going to want to borrow money in the mainland on loans, on properties elsewhere and so on, I've come across a situation where people don't have an established credit record. Because their systems, those banking systems, don't actually routinely access or haven't got in place the arrangements to access locally the kind of detailed information that are kind of a lower level. What they would access, has been said already by people with more knowledge than I, is they would access the national databases that exist on debts, such as run by the Registry Trust and so on, which is pretty well a national body whereby anybody, in fact, having a judgment against them in Jersey for debt, that is actually recorded within that database. So at the moment, I think the national bases actually record the negative problems about people. And they don't, I don't think, routinely access positive things. And I think where this takes me, and I think what probably underlines this, is that I do think we will need to, as a government, to start to look to introduce some kind of home loan systems for affordable homes of ourselves. And I think this will take us into working with banks and others about working up the sort of criteria on the lending and so on, which will, I think, lead towards work in this area of where people's records in what you might call domestic affairs, in rental and income tax and so on, so can be taken into consideration. Because obviously banks, nobody's going to lend money to unknown credit risks. So I think the intention behind this proposition is good. But I think I don't underestimate the challenges that will be required to take it forward.
Any other member wish to speak? Senator Gorst.
Thank you, sir. I just want to thank the proposer, sir, for his very constructive engagement with officials in the financial services unit and the work that the Assistant Minister is doing around consumer lending. And I think the proposal from the Deputy fits in very nicely with the work on consumer lending. We just heard of the Assistant Minister's vast experience in that particular area and some of the traps which need to be avoided as we do that work and as we think about the ability of lending criteria to help get people onto the home owner ladder. And of course it fits in with the work that the Housing Minister is going to be doing with his Housing Policy Development Board. There is not going to be one single measure that will make homes more affordable and help young families onto that housing ladder. It is going to be a range of measures. One of those measures is about access to credit, but of course we in this place must also be mindful that there are restrictions on access to credit for very good reasons. And so we don't want to solve one problem and create another. The Deputy says absolutely mindful of this, and that's why I thank him for his constructive engagement. We in the department support his proposals, and we will incorporate it into those consultations and those pieces of important work. Thank you, sir.
Senator Farnham.
Thank you, sir. And this is an important proposition. which really and ultimately is about regulating lending into the future. And Deputy Messor did ask in relation to the comms position, and as the Chief Minister is busy working on hospital notes as I'm looking over my shoulder for the next debate, I wondered if I might just comment on that briefly. And Com did discuss this, sir, and generally welcomed the constructive contribution which should be seen in context of the state's strategy for improving home affordability and access to credit. So, yes, Com was generally supportive of Part A of the proposition, agreeing to consult over how rental and parish rate payments history are considered in mortgage credit worthiness assessments as part of introducing, at a later date, consumer lending regulation. And also, Sir Com were keen to keep open the prospect of supporting Part B of the proposition, which considers if rental and parish rate payments history are factored into creditworthiness assessments for non-mortgage related lending, sir. But that is something that we could do after learning from the UK experience. So I just wanted to say that, thank the Deputy for his proposition. I think we all agree that we need in the modern world to look towards regulating for the lending industry, which is very important to us, sir. Thank you very much.
Does any other member wish to speak? And invite Deputy Masson to reply.
Thank you, sir. Can I begin by thanking members for their contribution, particularly Senator Farnham, Senator Gorst and the Constable of St Wands. Absolutely accept the caveats that the Constable of St Wands outlined in that there is more work to be done in this area, and I'm not looking to bind the department's hands in any particular way, except in saying that this should be looked into. And I'm grateful to say that that's something which they accept, and whether that should be widened out to incorporate other schemes, again, that's within the Minister's hands, and of course I'm happy to support that. The Constable of St Ballard's asked me, what's the cost going to be to the parishes? I can't say that at the moment, because all I'm asking for is that with industry, the department asked how it could be done. Now, it can come back saying actually it would be too complicated and therefore we couldn't do it, and therefore there would be no impact on the parishes. Fine, but again, I'm sure the parishes, if there was a way in which they could support people for their creditworthiness checks that would help them get a mortgage, that might be something that they would be willing to support by sharing data in some way. But again, what I'm asking for is for those questions to be asked. So, okay, there might be a bit of a consultation cost between the parishes, but I think the constables would probably be keen to support that in some way. But again, that's for the Financial Services Department to work through. I thank the Deputy of Trinity for his question, whether I was looking to lend money states-wise. Not actually what my proposition is asking for at this stage. Whatever is developed by the ministers, we'll see in future, but that's not what I'm asking for ourselves. But I absolutely thank the Deputy for his contribution, because he revealed quite a lot of experience and knowledge in this particular area, which I think members will find particularly useful, and I'm thankful for him for contributing in that way. Deputy Young talked about kind of the bigger systematic issues about how credit is assessed. And again, going back to what the Constable of St Wands said about how we interact with the UK system. The reason why I brought my proposition is this is being discussed in the UK at the moment, and it's about whether we can change with them, kind of almost at the same time. So there is that parity in systems, or whether we kind of do the typical Jersey thing and wait up 20 years and then do it. So again, I think if we just keep it open and ask those questions, maybe the groundwork can't be done within the lifetime of this assembly. But again, if that's been looked into, And you might say maybe not in the lifetime of this assembly, but actually because it's on stream 5 years' time, it's something that we can then plug into. I'm happy with that, but I think it's about asking the questions about rental payments when assessing creditworthiness as part of the wider consultation that the department is doing. That's what I'm looking to do. What that comes out with, of course, will be subject to consultation with the industry. I thank again Senator Farnham for his comments, and provided I've not confused anyone, I'd like to ask the appel. Thank you, sir.
Well, Deputy, before we do that, can I just ask you to focus on paragraph C? And it may well be that I must register apologies for the second time in the day. Paragraph A is a request to any minister seeking to introduce consumer lending related legislation to undertake to consult. So that is straightforward. Paragraph B is to say what that consultation should include. And paragraph C requests the relevant minister, whoever that may be, to bring forward the necessary legislative changes. And I'm not clear what the necessary legislative changes are when A and B have dealt with just a request that they consult. Presumably, and the reason I ask the question is that it's not right for the Assembly to adopt a request to ministers to bring forward changes, legislative changes, if nobody knows what those are. If you have a clear answer to that, that's excellent. If you don't, then may I suggest that you take paragraphs A and B together, and paragraph C we might take afterwards.
So I can do even better. I'll withdraw paragraph C.
I think that's better still. Very good. So you've asked for the appel. I invite members to return to their seats. The vote is on paragraphs A and B of P3, the proposition of Deputy Musson in relation to credit-related checks, and I ask the greffier to open the voting. If all members had the opportunity of voting, I ask the greffier to close the voting. I can announce the proposition has been adopted. 45 votes in favour, no votes against.
May I thank members for their support.
We now come to draft.
Sir, I wonder if I might address you on a procedural issue before we move on to the next proposition. Given the time, we know that we are going to sit tomorrow. Testing mood of the Assembly, to make the decision to start the hospital debate fresh tomorrow morning, and to adjourn this sitting after the debate on the Chairman's Committee proposition has concluded. That way people won't feel they need to rush that one at all, but because it seems ridiculous to, we'll probably only get my speech in, and then we adjourn. And I don't think that's a sensible way to progress a debate. I know it's a little bit radical, it's not unusual. We might be adjourning 25 minutes or half an hour earlier than we might ordinarily do, but I think there is a special circumstance with a big important debate that we should take fresh in the morning, and it'll help the debate. So could I make that proposition, if it's allowed?
We're very confident we'll finish P4 tonight, obviously.
So I would like to second that.
But members seem generally to be in favour of taking P4 and then adjourning at that stage.
No. Sarah, I feel quite differently about it, actually, and I do hope that P4 will take us a matter of 5 minutes max, and it would be good, especially considering I'm sure the lovely ladies and gentlemen in the gallery are not here to listen to a debate on P4 or any of the prior debates this afternoon, sir. It would be nice to actually get started, and I'm sure we all have the matters at hand at the forefront of our minds anyway, so we shall not forget the words of Deputy Labby overnight.
Well, there's a proposition from Deputy Labby that we deal with P4 and then the state's adjourned until tomorrow morning.
Sir.
Let's not have a debate about it.
I was going to ask, sir, that before you put it to us, I do think members, if we start tomorrow morning, that raises the question whether we may have to stay late tomorrow night in order to finish it.
Well, so the proposal is that, was it seconded? the proposal is that we take P4, the amendment number 39, the standing orders, and then adjourn after that, so that we start afresh with the future hospital debate tomorrow. Those members in favour of adopting that proposition kindly show. Those against? Proposition is adopted.
So may I just apologise to members of the public in the gallery, but it is for the common good, and I hope they'll understand.
If those in the gallery haven't quite followed it, we're not going to talk about the hospital tonight. Right. We come to P4, the draft amendment number 39 of the Standing Orders of the States of Jersey. I ask the Greffier to read the proposition.
Draft Amendment number 39 of the Standing Orders of the States of Jersey. The States, under Article 48 of the States of Jersey Law 2005, make the following amendment to the Standing Orders of the States of Jersey.
Yeah. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. I really do hope that members will consider this a very minor tidying up exercise. It simply relates to 2 scrutiny panels and the shifting of those panels to reflect the changes in the current government. Firstly, to reflect the Minister for Housing, which is now the Minister for Children and Housing, and also to move the focus of the Corporate Services Scrutiny Panel, on which was on international finance and financial services, from that panel to economic affairs. And if members think for one moment that I was trying to reduce the workload, I have myself moved on to economic affairs as well. So also the final part of this allows just makes a change to the minister who can, the rules of which minister can and cannot nominate a particular person for the role of a scrutiny panel chairman. So I do hope that members will understand and take and support this proposition.
Proposition seconded. Does any member wish to speak on the proposition? All those in favour?
Oh, sorry, sir, I was going to speak on this proposition. No, sorry.
You have up to 3 calls for now.
I just need to get something off my chest with the Assembly with this. And that is the proposition, which is my fault. I brought it and the Assembly backed me, to have ministers not vote for their opposing, as it were, chairman of scrutiny panels. And I've had a bit of a Damascene conversion on this for this reason. It just felt a bit daft, actually, during the course of the last elections for ministers and scrutiny chairs. And I'm uneasy about disenfranchising any member of the Assembly, taking their vote, effectively taking their vote away on something. And I'm uneasy about that. It's very rarely done, isn't it, if ever? And I might seek the advice of my Privileges and Procedures Committee, and in due course bring a proposition to take that out and return to the old system. I can't really see that ministers would really vote for the person they thought was most inept to be the scrutiny chair, opposing them. And so in my youth and ignorance, I brought that proposition to the House. And I just wanted to say that I'm not sure. I would be interested to hear what any other member says about this. But if members feel it's working, if it's worthwhile, or whether we should scrap it and not disenfranchise any member from voting on these important questions.
Any other member wish to speak? Deputy Taddy.
So the chairman's given an invite. Could you just clarify, sir, that it's in order to be talking on the issue which the chairman has sought to solicit answers? Because I'm quite happy to, but I'm not sure whether it speaks to the proposition that's being put forward by the scrutiny chairman. chairperson or chair.
Chairman.
She's lovely, whatever you call her. I said, yeah, take that with a pinch of irony. But I'd like to comment on what Deputy Labby just said, because I think you either do it one way or the other. You do it properly, or you...
I think, Deputy, you are right to ask me to give you a ruling on it, because there is no amendment proposed to Standing Order 126A, but which is the one that deals with voting. And therefore, the Chairman of Privileges and Procedures has spoken very eloquently off the subject. So it's probably an invitation that ought not theoretically to be taken up, unless members stamp their feet now, in which case let's have a debate about it. Right, good. So you should not take up the Chairman's invitation.
So I'll just conclude then. I'm quite happy to come and talk to the Chairman privately, and he should extend an invitation to members. I think there is a wider piece of work on this. This is just a consequential amendment that's being put forward that the Chairman has to follow, so I'm sympathetic.
Senator Ferguson.
Yes, I'm sure that Deputy Labby didn't mean to, perhaps mislead the House or the Assembly. Sorry, sir. But in fact, he kept talking about the scrutiny panel and the the Minister and the opposing chairman of the scrutiny panel. We are not an opposition, we are critical friends. And you can be jolly awkward as a critical friend, but it's not quite the sort of stand-up-in-your-face opposition. And just a slight correction for Deputy Tadier. Chairman is a generic title, and there's nothing wrong with it. So can we just stick to the proper title? Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak? Then I call on Senator Moore to reply.
Thank you, sir, and I thank those members for their helpful interventions. And in response to Deputy Russell Labby, perhaps all I need to say is that we're dealing with the standing orders that we currently have. Therefore, I hope that he will be kind enough to accept standing orders, and perhaps it can be a matter for PPC if he has chosen to change his mind. I, for one, think that it was a sensible vote at the time. I believe I voted with it then. I think he had good support from the Assembly at the time. And so I would propose kindly that he sticks to other work programmes that he has, because perhaps his time might be better used. But that's just a simple piece of advice from the Chairman, if I may. So, sir, I will not stall for any longer, and I hope that members will support this proposition.
Those in favour of the appell's call for, invite members to return to their seats. The vote is on draft amendment number 39 of the standing orders of the states, and I'll ask the greffier to open the voting. All members have had the opportunity of voting. I ask the greffier to close the voting. I can announce that the amendment has been adopted at 44 votes in favour and no votes against. And that is without the chairman being a piece of furniture. Well, the states will stand adjourned until 9:30 tomorrow.